The Zemene Mesafint was a period in Ethiopian history when the country was divided within itself into several regions with no effective central authority. It was a period in which the emperors were reduced to little more than figureheads confined to the capital city of Gondar. History. Traditionally, the beginning of this period is set on the date Wara Seh Hegemony deposed Emperor Ios, and its end to Cass's coronation as Emperor Tewodros II, having defeated in battle all of his rivals. Some historians date the murder of Iyasu the Great, and the resultant decline in the prestige of the dynasty, as the beginning of this period. Others date it to the beginning of Iyos's reign. The Zemene Mesafint can be summarized as follows. It was a period when Ethiopia was divided within itself into several regions with no effective central authority. In other words, the state had collapsed or disintegrated. The most powerful lords during this period were Ras Ali, Ras Ali Gaz, Ras Helu Yosidek, Dejazmish Wube Hailmariam, Ras Wald Selassie, Ras Gugsa, Ras Ali II, and King Salah Selassie of Shawa. However, the Yeju lords did have predominance or hegemony over the other lords of Ethiopia. The lords constantly fought against each other for aggrandizement of the territory and to become the guardians of the kings of Gondar. The monarchy continued only in name because of its sacred character. This nominal but divinely ordained monarchy preserved the dynasty from actual extinction. Crummy, Rubenson, Abir and Schiff-Robekel agree that in all the disintegration, chaos, and anarchy, the Yeju lords ruled the country in the name of the Solomonic dynasty. That being said, the term that perhaps needs to be precisely defined has to do with the appellation of the Yeju. Very often it is called the Yeju dynasty. There is no problem with this name except that at times it created confusion with the Yeju province. It is preferable to call them by the name that they themselves preferred and by what others called them, Wara Seh. This appellation clearly refers to the family rather than to the province. Scholars now agree that of the Wara Seh rulers, Ras Gugsa's reign was characterized more by peace than by war. The power of the Wara Seh rulers was much more than predominance. They exercised actual authority over the other lords. The latter were the tributary lords and the Wara Seh were suzerains or overlords. To be sure, the Wara Seh did not exercise absolute authority outside of the provinces directly under the rule. These provinces extended from Begamdra across Chachaho Pass to the Amhara provinces of Makit, Wadla, Delanta, and Darwand. Their authority over the lords of the rest of the regions, Gojam, Walla, Semyon, Tigray up to Hamasyan, Wag and the like, was rather restricted to the power of making them pay regular tributes, be in attendance in their court for a given period of the year, participate in the wars and exercise right of appeal in matters of justice. They also had the right of confirmation in their offices when new lords came to power in one way or another. At times, they even went to the extent of chaining some of the recalcitrant lords. During the Zemene Mesafint, various lords came to abuse their positions by making emperors, and encroached upon the succession of the dynasty by candidates among the nobility itself. For example, on the death of Emperor Tewodros, the chief nobles of Ethiopia feared that the cycle of vengeance that had characterized the reigns of Tewodros and Tekel Hamanot would continue if a member of the Solomonic dynasty were picked for the throne. So they selected one of their own, Iostos, to be king of kings. However, the tenure of Iostos was brief and the throne came into the hands of the Solomonic house once again. The reign of Iyasu II had brought the empire once again to disaster. He ascended the throne as a child, allowing his mother, Empress Mentewab, to play a major role as his regent. Mentewab had herself crowned as co-ruler, becoming the first woman to be crowned in this manner in Ethiopian history. Beyond the capital of Gondar, the empire suffered from regional conflict between nationalities that had been part of the empire for hundreds of years: the Agaf, Amharans, Shoans, and Tigrians, and the Oromo newcomers. Mentewab's attempt to strengthen ties between the monarchy and the Oromo by arranging the marriage of her son to the daughter of an Oromo chieftain from Yedu backfired in the long run. Her attempt to continue in this role after the death of her son into the reign of her grandson Iyoas brought her into conflict with Wabit, Ieyasu's widow, who believed that it was her turn to serve as regent. When Iyoas assumed the throne upon his father's sudden death, the aristocrats of Gondar were stunned to find that he preferred to speak in the Oromo language rather than in Amharic, and favored his mother's Yeju relatives over the Gwarans of his grandmother's family. Iyoas further increased the favor given to the Oromo when adult. On the death of the Ras of Amhara, he attempted to promote his uncle Luba governor of that province, but the outcry led his advisor Wald Lul to convince him to change his mind. The conflict between these two queens led to Mentewab summoning her relatives with their armed supporters from Wara to Gondar to support her. Wabit responded by summoning her own Oromo relatives and their considerable forces from Yeju, fearing that the power struggle between the Gwarans and the Yeju led by the Empress Mother Wabit would erupt into an armed conflict. The nobility summoned the powerful Ras Seh to mediate between the two camps. He arrived and shrewdly maneuvered to sideline the two queens and the supporters, making a bid for power for himself. Mikhail settled soon as the leader of Amharic Tigrian camp of the struggle. Iro's reign becomes a narrative of the struggle between the powerful Ras Seh and the Oromo relatives of Iyoas. Iyoas effectively had little say, as he inherited an empty imperial treasury and depended heavily on his Oromo relations. As he increasingly favored Oromo leaders like Faisal, his relations with Mikhail Seh deteriorated. Eventually Mikhail Seh deposed the Emperor Iyoas. 1 week later, Mikhail Seh had him killed. Although the details of his death are contradictory, the result was clear. For the first time an emperor had lost his throne in a means other than his own natural death in battle, or voluntary abdication. For this point forward the empire devolved ever more openly in the hands of the great nobles and military commanders because of its effects. Iyo's assassination is usually regarded as the start of the era of the princes. An aged and infirm imperial uncle prince was enthroned as Emperor Johannes II. Ras Mikhail soon had him murdered, and underage Tekel Haymanot II was elevated to the throne. Then Mikhail Seh was defeated in the 3 battles of Sabakus and the triumvirate of Faisal, Goshu of Amhara, and Wandbawasan of Begemda placed their own emperor on the throne. More emperors followed as these 3 fell from power and were replaced by other strongmen, who constantly elevated and removed emperors. Tekel Georges is famous for having been elevated to the throne altogether 6 times and also deposed 6 times. Meanwhile, Amhasis of Shawa wisely kept out of this endless fighting, devoting his energies to consolidating his kingdom and founding Ankoba. This was a practice that his successors followed to the end of the kingdom. The years from 1771 to 1784 constituted a sort of interregnum, or a transition age between 2 eras, the era of the absolute monarchy and the era of rule by the Wara Seh rulers. Tekel Georges I, whose first reign was from 1779 to 1784, tried to assert all over again some, if not all, of the powers of the monarchy. Unfortunately for him and the dynasty as a whole, he ended up losing everything. Ali I defeated him in early 1784 at a place called Afarawanit and replaced him with Iyasu III, who was a full puppet. 2 years later, in 1786, Ali became Ras Tewodros II, and with his ascent to power, the Yeju dynasty, or more precisely, the Wara Seh dynasty, came into being. Ras Ali and his remaining Wara Seh family members became enderesses of the Ethiopian Empire, until the emergence of Kasehelu, the future Emperor Tewodros II. Power was transferred from Ras Ali to his brother Ras Ali Gaz. After the death of Ras Ali Gaz, Ras Wald Selassie, hereditary ruler of Endete and overlord of Tigray, became enderese of the empire, briefly taking power away from the Wara Seh rulers. Upon his death, power was transferred to Ras Ali Gaz's nephew, Ras Gugza, who in turn transferred power to his sons Ras Yimim, Ras Mariya, and Ras Dori. After the death of Ras Dori, Ras Ali II, a nephew of Ras Gugza, became enderese. The Zemene Mesafint, which in a span of 86 years saw 23 emperors occupy the throne, came to an end with the rise of Kasehelu, better known by his later throne name of Tewodros II of Ethiopia. Kasa won his way to control the imperial throne, first by occupying Dembia, then following a series of battles beginning with Gamba and ending with Battle of Dresg, came to control all of Ethiopia. More importantly, with his triumph over Ras Ali II at the Battle of Isel, Kasehelu ended the Wara Seh dynasty, and with imperial power once again in the hands of a single man, the Zemene Mesafint is considered to have ended, and the history of modern Ethiopia to have begun.